Hey guys, it's Sad and welcome back to the BulbaSquad. Today we're going to be talking about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, particularly the video game to start off with, and then we're going to move on to the potential that the future TCG sets have. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Yes, you read that title correctly. The Pokemon Company has made roughly $600 million in 3 days. Yes, I know they only get about a 30 to 40% cut of those retail games. So out of that 600 million, what are we talking? Like 200, 300 million of those dollars belong to them. It's like 200, 250. Nonetheless, it's a lot of money. Why are we talking about this? Well, before I really get into that, I want to preemphasis, or I want to emphasize something. This is going to come across as kind of a straw man argument, where I'm going to be putting some false argument that no one's making up, and then I'm going to knock it down so I look big and strong. No, that's not the goal. I believe that the argument I am about to pose is something that is to come in the future sets, maybe even in the next few years. And I wanted to talk about it now because the moment I saw this article, that was the first thing that came to mind, and I thought, you know what, this could be a fun conversation. The argument that I'm going to pose is people are going to stop and think, you know what? Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as of right now, just so you guys understand, in 3 days they sold 10 million copies. It is a console exclusive game. Right now, it holds the title of the fastest selling Pokemon game of all time, the fastest selling Nintendo game of all time, the fastest selling first party game of all time, and the fastest selling console exclusive game of all time. Yes, you heard that right. God of War Ragnarok, I'm sure most of you have at least heard of it. God of War Ragnarok, in 1 week, 7 days, they sold 5.1 million copies for the PlayStation 5. Nintendo did 10 million in 3 days. Less than half the time, they did double what God of War did. Think about that. And so, with these accolades, and who knows where it's going to end up? Maybe it's the best-selling Pokemon game of all time by the end of this. Who knows? I expect that people in the future are going to stop and think, you know what? Scarlet and Violet, best-selling game of all time? Maybe it's going to be the best set of all time. Maybe it's going to be a fantastic investment in the long run. And that's the argument I want to talk about because I think it's going to come down the pipeline. There's no content about it out there yet, but I think people are going to think about it. Even if they're not thinking about it now, it's coming because I've seen it happen before. I've seen people talk about how big a pop culture thing can be. Something within culture, think of Marvel Comics, think about collectible video games, all these things. And then they make these, how would you say, correlations and connections that don't actually work in reality. So I wanted to talk about that. Now, with that intro out of the way, those of you who are still here, thank you for that. Let's actually talk about it. So, overall, the lesson I want to talk about today is how cultural significance does not equate to an investable speculative asset. They are not equatable. One does not mean that the other will be assured. I want to talk about it because if this does become the biggest Pokemon game of all time and it is a massive success, and people go into the future sets investing, thinking, you know what, all the success that happened with the video game, it's going to translate to the TCG, and I'm going to make bank in the future. So I wanted to talk about that from a certain perspective. If you guys want the more educated version of this, go check out Sean with Reserved Investments. I'm going to put the video on screen right here. Watch it. It's seriously worth watching the conversation he has. The thing that he poses, and it is very true, if being culturally significant alone would be enough to guarantee speculative or investment success, then there would be a number of things that are much bigger today than they actually are. Star Wars memorabilia is one of them. Star Wars is one of the biggest franchises ever. Disregard what happened with the sequels and how there's a rift in between the fandoms. There's still a lot of good faith within the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And there's a lot of collectibles in it. There's no arguing that Star Wars is a massive fandom. Yet, where's that giant market? Why aren't there more and more collectibles that are worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars within that market? And why wouldn't it be everywhere? Why wouldn't it be something that's honestly comparable to Pokemon? because cultural significance does not dictate future success for, or even, let's say, just being just investable in general. Another example I'm going to use, this one is a little further from you guys, is Pez dispensers. Sean used it perfectly. When it comes to Pez dispensers, they like to throw out a lot of pop culture stuff into them. You have Star Wars ones from the original releases. You have Marvel Comics, a number of things. I would say to an extent it's culturally significant. You can't walk into a store and there isn't a Pez dispenser. Basically every kid has seen one and had them. You know, the little... and it pops out the little candies? Yeah, basically everyone's seen them. Yet, they're not really a market anymore. They're not relevant when it comes to investing. They are relevant culturally because, you know, they stay alive, they keep innovating. But that market at one point was worth quite a bit of money. And now it's just trending downhill, and it kept going downhill. It's flatlined. With Pokemon, it's the same idea. Yes, the video games are very much connected to the TCG. Of course, they have the same name, they have the same faces, the trainers are same, everything. And at the same time as a video game is out, the TCG is running its own cards. But there's not crossover. There's less than what you think. You might think, oh, someone plays the video game and really likes it, so they're going to go cross over into the TCG in the future. So when the kid who grew up on, let's say, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is going to wake up 30 years from now, want to relive his childhood, and go after the cards. That's not how it works. These markets don't have as much crossover within each other or within itself as you would think. Let me pose a couple questions to you guys real quick. How many of you guys have seen Lord of the Rings? Like just, let's say the original Lord of the Rings, not the Hobbits. Okay, probably a couple of you in the audience, I have no idea. Let's say probably half of you. Now, how many of you have read Lord of the Rings? Like actually read it? I'm willing to bet out of the ones who said yes, maybe, let's be generous, about a quarter of you have read it. Why? Because it's a hard to read book. It's not everyone's cup of tea. All right, anime viewers. I know that's become a lot more popular. Let's say you really like anime. How many of you have read the light novels of things? Better yet, how many of you even know what a light novel is? It's literally just a book version of the anime. Or of the manga, or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, there's no crossover. Even though, from the screen to the book, it just increases on detail. It just embellishes things. You get more of what you love from the movie, yet you didn't read the book. When it comes to anime, fantastic thing, fantastic storytelling, characters are compelling. But then the light novel takes all of that and dials it up even further. Yet you don't read that. Even less people read it. There's less crossover than you think. And I want people to understand this and know it. Because even if you're not among the people who thought that, oh, just because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is doing well, eventually it's investable, you might make that fallacy or that thought process in other TCGs and other things by mistake when it comes to these speculative assets in this pop culture market. And I wanted to simply address it because I think it's a good lesson to have. I don't think there's any way to really say this lesson too many times or teach it too many times because, quite frankly, I don't see anyone teaching it. The only one I've ever seen is Sean with Reserved Investments. And I know how small of his audience is, and I know that my audience doesn't always go to his type of content because it's hard to watch sometimes. Let's be honest, it is hard to watch sometimes. Because unless if you're really interested, it's hard to take in so much information sometimes. Regardless of how you want to educate yourself, with that much information and a lack of real, genuine interest, you can't sit there and listen to it and fully absorb everything. So I want to have that conversation here. Because I don't want people to turn around and go, oh, I want to buy Scarlet and Violet, put in thousands of dollars, and throw it in my closet. I'll pick it out in 20 years. You don't know if it's going to make money because cultural relevance doesn't equate to investable or speculative, like properly speculative, that you can make money off of it. All you know is that right now it's relevant. In the next 5 years, it's probably going to be relevant. But in 20 years, who knows? People might not care anymore. Let me give you an even better example. Marvel. Marvel, by the time we reach the Infinity War and Endgame, I'm talking about because basically everyone knows this, they had so much momentum, so much influence, that anything they put out was going to succeed. It was that powerful. Now, it's not uncommon for mediocre or subpar Marvel movies to fail. You can argue for what those reasons are, that's not the point. No one could have imagined that Marvel has reached the point where it is now, where there's a lot more burnout, there's a lot less people interested, some movies barely break even, others even lose money. And that's only been in a few short years. When did Endgame come out? Let's say, I think Endgame came out 5 years ago or 4 years ago. It hasn't been that long. And yeah, look at where it is now. Do you really think that that couldn't happen to Pokemon when it comes to how quickly certain things can change in the investment world, in the speculation? Just look at 2020, how fast we went from modern is fully dead, no one cares about it, to everyone and their mother now has a closet filled with modern. Everyone. It was such a hard 180 turn, and the effects are still going today, and people still think like that. What are the odds that happens with Scarlet and Violet? That you try and invest and it all goes sour on you just because you made a long-term bet on a hobby or in a market where the only things that are quite frankly fairly certain and you can predict are the short-term gambles. Because that's what it is. You can't predict what's going to happen in 20 years, but you can pretty damn well predict what's going to happen in 5 years. Because the tastes don't change that fast. That's all I got for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed this kind of discussion and topic, please tell me down below in the comments what your thoughts are on all this, because I am one man at the end of the day. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like and subscribing. And thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.